Tom Spitaleri, who is a local historian and a member of the Friends of the Park here. So, Tom, I will let you begin your presentation now.
Before we get into the socialist movement and what was going on here, we got to talk about a few things that was leading up to the socialists. Someone just didn't wake up that morning and goes, we need the socialist movement in Massachusetts. Let's start what was going on in New England. So as we know, we're in the Merrimack River Valley, correct? And we learned from Rich a little bit about the Merrimack River history, that it spawned the Industrial Revolution. Because 11 or so million years ago, the Wisconsin Ice Glacier, Laurentine Ice Glacier, rerouted the river and gave birth to the Merrimack River Valley, which gave birth to textiles in Lawrence, Lowell, duck cloth in Methuen, and of course, the shoe industry in Haverhill. And there was another small industry of electric trolley cars in the Andover section, which we'll get to, because that had a lot to do with this movement. There was a lot of moving parts that was going on here. So, what happened in 1860? Anybody remember? The Civil War broke out. That was not a good time in American history, was it? Very sad time. We sent a lot of soldiers from Lawrence, Methuen, and Haverhill, and some came home, some didn't. But what else happened in 1860? No, that was, I dropped a blank on that one. What year was that one?
1860.
That was 1862, okay. What else happened in 1860?
The election of Abraham
Lincoln, yep. And what else? One other thing. Ready? Didn't have a lot to do with Lawrence, but it has to do with this whole conversation I'm going to start. The Great Shoe Strike. Massachusetts shoe industry shut down. Now, mind you, Haverhill was the second largest, by 1860, the second largest shoe manufacturer in the state. Only Brockton was bigger than us. So they shut down. So by the mid to late 1800s, socialism or social democracy, that's what it was originally called. Not socialism, not that dirty word that we call it today. Social democracy. You got to remember, back in the 1800s, early 1900s, it wasn't, a lot of this stuff that we call bad words today were always democracy. Unions. Some people don't like the unions. In Argentina during this time, they had a group, the union group called themselves Union Democra, meaning union democracy. So it wasn't, so we're now talking social democracy here. Not socialism, folks, social democracy. And that was strong in Haverhill. It incorporated the local labor unions to provide broad support. Political ambitions of city leaders also helped with a few of the inept political leaders. So the labor movement in Haverhill was not foreign. The Working Man's Party would open up, would be on the ballot. The Small Labor Party disappeared around 1892 when a large group of citizens committed to support the People's Party. So we're getting a lot of name changes here. Now we're at the People's Party. And we're not even to the vault of the story yet. James Carey was a prominent trade unionist and presided over the caucus. This fine young gentleman in the center picture, James Carey. By 1895, the Populist Party was done. James Carey had led the party, was reported to be a strong socialist party. So people in the upper up didn't like the way that party was going. It was becoming too close to socialism. So by the April of 1895, the Socialist Labor Party, the SLP, was born, and by the fall of 1895, most of the Populist Party had joined. So the Populist Party shrinked, and the SLP started to grow. With the merger of sorts, was sort of a merger, I guess, the SLP had gained local labor leaders. Besides strike talk, he also asked the people to strike on the ballot box and elect leaders that will fight for the workers. The Socialist Party was working hard, promising the citizens and workers of Haverhill and beyond, because it started in Haverhill, but it really moved throughout the state. Better working conditions, because remember, working in the mills wasn't like working today. There was no 40-hour work week. Women lost their hair, men lost their lives, women lost their lives. You lost fingers, nails. Your hair got caught in the machine. If you had nice long hair like Sarah has over there, you'd have to cut it off because it could get stuck in the machine and pull your scalp off. Working in the mills in Lawrence, even in the shoe factories, were just as dangerous. You had chemicals in there that could kill you, because remember, shoes have color to them, right? Well, those are dyes. Some of those chemicals that makes dyes aren't too healthy for you. That's why our rivers were so unhealthy for years. All along the river, not just here in the Merrimack River Valley of Mass, even in New Hampshire. So, it was dangerous out there. It was really dangerous, and that's what was going on. So we have a little board here showing that, about that. There's some written stuff here. So they called for a strike. The strike happened. 1894 to 1895. Now, when was the Bread and Roses strike? 1912. So this strike was first. But notice it only lasted a year. They helped provide some rations of food for the workers. Socialism continued strong, but due to the internal conflict and resurgence of the Republican Party, not the Republican Party we talk about today, but the original Republican Party, Carey lost in 1903, led to the end of socialism in Haverhill and the region. So, by 1893, the factories started cutting hours. Not just the shoe factories, Lawrence is cutting. And remember, they didn't give out pay raises back then. I think one famous guy in Lawrence said, if we continued to pay at 40 hours a week, that would be a pay raise for employees if we're cutting hours back, and the mills can't afford pay raises. That would almost be like saying today that Amazon couldn't afford pay raises. I mean, when you want to draw so they weren't going to give out pay raises. So there was an economic downturn around that time in 1893, which led to the cut in hours, also led to the cut in wages. Basically, we were facing economic depression at that time, and shoe sales were down. So by mid-December, which was the peak of the busy season, to March 1895, 3,000 shoe workers made up of Italian and Jewish immigrants walked out. That's just alone in Haverhill. But there was probably tens of thousands that walked out throughout the Massachusetts. The Chick and the Spalding, they were both located on River Street. Familiar with Haverhill? Anybody? The Spalding is still standing. That's an apartment building on River Street near the Moody School. The other one has collapsed. They took it down. It used to be where Dairy Queen was in Haverhill. It's now a BMW dealership owns it down there, right next to BMW. So those were the two modern factories. So those were producing more shoes than the factories on Washington Street that you drive down today and see where all the great restaurants are and they got housing upstairs. Those were the ones that were punching out most of the shoes in Haverhill. There was factories that were producing more than the ones on Washington Street. The strike ended in 1895 by a vote to get back to work. Now, What did the strike really accomplish? Not much. Got a few cent pay raise out of it, a few people did, the workers, so it helped a little bit. But you notice it only lasted a few months. I mean, it sounds like it's a whole year, 1894 to 95, but in reality, the strike started in the end of November and only went till March of 1895. I mean, so what did it accomplish, though? It did give you some workers' rights, their rights, but not like the bread and roses. But because of this strike, what was learned from this strike was you need to make sure the people could eat. You need to make sure people could get the medical appointments if they needed to, because during this strike, these people couldn't. They weren't getting enough food. The kids were starving, families were starving, so there was a vote forced to bring them back to work. Now, as we know with bread and roses, and I'm not trying to steal the muster here, they set up food pantries, doctors, sent the kids over to Barry, Vermont, to the union halls, which, by the way, the union hall that most of the kids were sent to was almost destroyed again for the 4th time by the flooding that just took place in Vermont, because I just got an email from them like 2 days ago. So just so you know that, the Barry, Vermont Historical Society, which some of the Lawrence kids went to, took a big hit again during the flood. This is like the 3rd or 4th time it almost went downriver, this building up there. So that's what was going on with that. And then, so that's 1895, socialism is building. By the early 1900s, before the Bread and Roses strike, there was the trolley car strike in Andover, which was led by who? Well, who ended up being the scab workers were the poor Italian immigrants. They got called in to work the trolley cars until the strike was settled because they couldn't shut the trolley cars down. It's almost like an airplane strike. You can't really shut the airplanes down during the holiday season. Wouldn't be a good thing for anybody. You had that issue going on. And then, of course, 1912. So let's get to John Calvin Chase, who's an interesting fella. There's a nice picture of that cheeky fella, as you can see here. He's actually in the Haverhill High Hall of Fame book. Haverhill City Hall of Fame. That's all they put in the Hall of Fame book. So, born in Gilmanton, New Hampshire. Been to that town. Great town, if you ever want to go to it. So you had a socialist and a mass murderer living right up the street from one another. We'll throw that in there because it's part of industrial history. Who remembers the Chicago World's Fair? Anybody? Anyone read about the Chicago World Fair? Lawrence was involved, Haverhill was involved. It was a big, huge fair in Chicago. There was something called the Murder House. Ever hear of the Murder House? This guy was killing people, built a hotel with secret walls so he could sneak in there at night and kill people and put them in the basement. It's called the Murder Hotel. It was the first mass murderer. John Calvin Chase was born on this road in Gilmanton. The house is right here, and 4 houses up from him where that guy was born. Interesting community. It always was an interesting community, that and Dunbarton. So he was born in Gilmanton in 1870 in a working class family, very important. By the age of 1, the family moved to Ossipee, New Hampshire. That year, his father, Levy Chase, died. I found Levy Chase's grave in Ossipee. Now, why did they move down? Obviously, the father had to work. And there's not a lot of mills in New Hampshire at that time up there. It's all farming. So where are the mills? Manchester, Rochester, Somersworth, all loaded with mills. Somersworth and Rochester were mill communities. Ossipee's over here. So Ossipee would be like the living in North Andover during the Industrial Revolution. Lawrence had the mills, and that's where they were living. This guy had to grow up real quick. His mother, Lethia, moved the family to Milton Mills, right next door to, not Milton, New Hampshire, Milton Mills, right next door to Rochester. Because, of course, then they could get an apartment, because Ossipee was, again, mostly single-family homes, all farms, but closer. And the mother went to work in the woolen mills in Milton. By the age of 9, he was working alongside his mother to help support the family. Imagine working at the age of 9 today. How many people in this room worked at the age of 9? Anybody? No. If you ask a generation back, you had somebody that was in their late 80s, early 90s in this room, well, every hand would be up. Because if you weren't working at a mill, you were working on the farm. So he had a strong work ethic from the time he was born. Kind of forced on him, which is sad. Having trouble finding steady work, the family moved to Sanford, Maine, to Barnstad, New Hampshire. So they went to Sanford because, again, another mill community. They worked there for a while. Work started slowing down. The mills never gave anybody notice. They just sent you home and you were done. So they went up to Barnstad. He kept moving. At the age of 13, he was working in a shoe factory in 1883. By 1888, he joined the Boot and Shoe Workers Union and was elected a delegate. Imagine being elected a delegate at 16 years old. I thought it was cool when I was 18, being elected to the Methuen Democratic City Committee, because that's how you elected in ballots on those committees. But 16 years old. So he's already building his leadership skills. He must have had pretty good leadership skills in the mills to get elected at 16. And he helped organize a national convention. In 1890, Chase moved to Haverhill to work in the shoe factories. The union soon led him to be unemployed in the industry. Big surprise there. You unionize, you lose your job. Today you can't do that. Back then, they got away with it. So no work, no money coming in. He opened up and established a co-op grocery store and smoke shop. What a great place to start a union out of. A smoke shop and a grocery store, because guess who you get to talk to? Every worker there is that needs food and their cigars. So he was a member of the People's Populist Party in 1890. In 1894, he was with the SLP of America, the Socialist Labor Party. Boy, by the end of this day, everybody's going to know all these acronyms like the back of their hand. Rich, you might want to write up a test. He was also a committed member of the Marxist Party and ran for Attorney General of Massachusetts under the SLP. In 1898, Chase returned to Haverhill as a member of the Socialist Labor. After a run in New York City, he went to New York City in 98 and tried to start the Socialist Labor Party, which he did, but he got blown out of the water running for statewide election out there. 1898, he organized a new party for Haverhill called the HSDP. Any guesses? Haverhill Socialist Democratic Party. Not Socialist Party, Haverhill Socialist Democratic Party. Boy, a lot of great acronyms here. And it was led by Victor Berger and Eugene Debs, with 60 new members. He changed the name to the SDP, the Socialist Democratic Party. In 1898, he ran for mayor of Haverhill and became the first socialist mayor ever elected in a major U.S. city. Wow, we elected a socialist in the Merrimack Valley. You wouldn't think that could happen. Especially where Haverhill was also known for what? The father of what party? Oh, the Republican Party. Quite a interesting mix of eclectic stuff going on here. In 1899, he ran and got reelected for a second term. And then in 1900, he lost the election. in Haverhill. In 1901, the Socialist Democratic and the Socialist Party merged, and Chase was named as a national organizer of that. So this guy was holding some high offices in the Socialist Democratic Party. This guy was not just a one-term wonder. He was traveling the country fighting for workers' rights all across the Americas. In 1901, he again opened up a cigar shop because he needed to make some money. What a great place to... Everybody needs a cigar back then. What a great place to start building and building again. In fact, the building his cigar shop is in is still there today. It's located right across from the old tap. The cigar shop was. Building still standing today. No, but way before that. Closer to Moulton Way. I'm trying to think what's there. The chiropractor, like 2 buildings down from the chiropractor. There. Then from 1902 to 03, Chase was named Socialist Party candidate for governor of Mass. He captured a huge 8.4% of the vote in Massachusetts. Needless to say, he lost. And then he ran a second year for the same seat and captured a whopping 6.4% of the population in Mass. So you see, socialism's now, it made its peak. It's now starting. People are going, nah, we don't really want this. We don't want this, so it's going down and down and down. Later on, Chase was elected to the state secretary of the Socialist Party of New York. So he did get around. In 1906, he was selected a candidate for governor of New York and ended with a loss. He garnished a whopping 1.5% of the vote, or 751 votes. And in New York City, I don't even think what you get through the front door of anything. 751 votes in New York City with, at that time, probably over 1 million people living there. That's just like one block. In 1920, Chase ran for U.S. Congress 3 times as a socialist in the 14th District of Ohio and lost everywhere. John C. Chase died January 27, 1937. We believe he's a short ride away in New Brighton, Pennsylvania. I'm going to go out there one day, but I got to stop by because I need to get special ride to get New Brighton, Pennsylvania. It's only about a 2-hour ride, but I want to stop and get a horse ride, get on the horses and go out there to go check out his grave. But that would make sense if that's where he's buried. Because again, in Pennsylvania, they had an industrial, a huge steel city, as we all know. There was a steel town girl walking around there for a while. So you could see the conditions, what Haverhill looked like. And one of the reasons why it's hard to find anything on Chase, and I'll talk about his family real quick, and then I'm going to end it. The reason why it's hard to find anything is because he had a falling out with the Debs Socialist Party, Eugene Debs. Him and Debs had a falling out. So when Chase passed on, Chase's end of the party passed on with them, and Debs continued to what we have today, to evolve today. So his mother was a Weber born in Dansville, Kentucky. His father was born in Germany, right towards the end of the war. All right. So if you want to come up and look at this stuff, you're more than welcome to. Any questions?